Okay, well, good evening, everybody. How's everyone doing? Hope everyone is well. I imagine that is probably not the case, at least when it comes to the cryptocurrency. And I mean, what can we say? I think I have a conversation like this pretty much with RT once every 4 years. That kind of started yesterday or 2 days ago when I posted in Discord about, people's emotions and managing them through tough times, etc. I remember posting the exact same thing back in 2022. And if that isn't giving alarm bells as to where we probably are right now, um, well, I don't really know how to put it except to say, welcome to the bear market. And unfortunately, that is the case. I think we have to. I'm going to outline everything as we go through tonight, where I've certainly been nervous about price action for a couple of months now. I mean, I even remember apologizing at the end of streams to just saying sorry for being so negative. But I think the reality of it is, whilst we've been kicking that can down the road, trying to sort of really make that decision, trying to hold on to hope and everything else, so many indicators are firing at the moment that just cannot be ignored. And whilst people will talk to you about a 5-year cycle, they'll throw ahead ISM, they'll talk about rate cuts being around the corner, the charts don't care. They really don't care. And so, because of that, we will we'll have to call it what it is. So I'm going to run through what I see, talk about sort of how price action has played out, where things may end up going, what this all means, maybe some bullish signs within there as well. We'll have a look at a deep dive in terms of actual localized price action on smaller timeframes. Can just take it from there. But I welcome anybody whilst I'm talking through this kind of stuff. If you either agree or disagree, feel free to put something in chat. Let's try and challenge that narrative that we're unfortunately seeing unfolding out to us right now. So let's just dive straight in. And yep, this is how bad it is. I was just looking to see if there are any jobs at McDonald's in the local area, and there are. So maybe it's not all that bad, but sadly the stark reality. Sorry, this should be in the price action chart, but it doesn't matter. The stark reality is that the price action is not in a good place right now. And there are a couple of questions that have effectively come out. And I will address both of these during the course of today, but actually both of them are effectively saying, where are we in the cycle? And that is exactly what we're going to be talking about. So James and Crypto are, I will keep on coming back to this, and we'll have a look at that at the next time. And let me not necessarily apologize, but let me just say, look, for those of you that have been in the group for greater than 12 months, those of you that are relatively new, whatever, it is completely acceptable for two people to have two completely contrasting views. I'm not asking you to pick sides. I'm not even asking you to side with me. I'm just asking you to at least hear out what I have to say. And if mine happens to differ from someone else, doesn't mean that I'm wrong. Doesn't mean that I'm right either. And so we just have to play it both that way. And that's sort of the whole part I've been trading in. For those of you that have tuned in on Tuesdays for the last 12 months, you will see that, I try and put both sides there. I try and question everything, my beliefs, just to make sure that I'm making the right decision. I think this is just another step. So if you are in the camp where you think, you know what, it's just a pullback, we're still in the bull market, let's go. That's absolutely fine. You just understand you prepared yourself for that. Whereas for me, I've been bearish for a while now, and I have that confirmation in my mind as to where we go. So let's just have a look at some of the charts very quickly on the 3-day time frame. Bitcoin at the top will enlarge this, although most of you probably don't want to see this pitch. And you can see for the last 7 candles, 21 days, we have fallen aggressively. We've fallen hard. As a matter of fact, we have made 7 red candles in a row. Granted, this last candle has still 2 and a bit days to go, but 6 red candles in a row on the 3-day time frame, falling from 98,002 at the moment. I mean, I don't know if anything just happened, but we fell down to 72,700. That is lower than where we were, one, when Donald Trump got elected, but two, remember the highs we talked about in March of 2024? We went lower than that. People thought that would never happen. And crypto does not care. Sorry if that noise is from one of the websites I'm just looking at for tonight. Crypto doesn't care. Doesn't care if you think it will never happen. If it's going to go there, it's going to go there. And it has returned to it. And on the way down, we have lost some significant levels. So last week we talked about 86,000 basically being the last line of defense. We lose that, I'm going to make some decisions. We lost it on Thursday, kind of regained it a bit on Friday. We lost it properly on Saturday, and I ended up selling a little bit more Bitcoin. I am not fully out, but I am a little bit more out of where we were. And then we've continued to fall through. There was a 78,000 kind of level that tied in with sort of the daily closes, or the 3 daily closes back in April of 2025. That didn't really hold us up too much. And I actually drew this 72,000 line before this dropped down today. And it was kind of tying in with the tops on the daily, I think, because it's not quite lining up. That should actually be down there, I suppose. So 71,400. And we're on our way down to that. Now, this does not look great, does it? I mean, it's looking very reminiscent of, the fall that we had, if not from 26,000, certainly from 14,000, with pretty much just a sheer drop back down. For those of you who remember, sort of end of November, that kind of happened. We had this period of just sort of consolidating back through, which we'll go through what levels that rejected from, but ultimately we had some sort of a pullback, yes, but more of just a tempered kind of catching our breaths. And I feel that when we do look at some of the shorter timeframes later on, we are due some sort of relief rally, pullback, whatever you want to call it. And even on the 3-day time frame, my assessment, I don't know how far we're going to go, is that we'll have some sort of move, probably up to the 86,000 level. It worked out as a pretty significant support and resistance level beforehand. It is also around about 50% of the drop that we've experienced. So you're going to see we are very oversold. And when we have a look back at other bear markets, you will see it's not a straight line down. So at some stage, I do think that there is some sort of relief rally. And if you can only stay here for the first 7 minutes and you're panicking and you're wanting to sell, don't sell right now. Honestly, I'm not sure it's worth it. We're so oversold. My thought process is really, at some stage, we're going to get a rally. Maybe it doesn't even get past 80K, but that's still 6,000 greater than where we currently sit at the moment, giving you a much better chance of an exit. And for me, the view would be that wait to see whatever that reef rally is. And it's when that, because you don't know when it's going to stop. We've got some rough ideas. It's when it rejects from whatever level, then we're kind of looking to get out. Bitcoin dominance, a little bit earlier on today, this was looking fairly strong at above 60%. Bitcoin's actually fallen harder than the rest of the altcoins over the last hour or so. So this has come back down, but we're still in the noise. 59.4. Nothing really screaming anything there for me. Doesn't give us any indication. In terms of total 2, we have lost those significant levels, similar to Bitcoin. We're down there. Earlier on today, we were actually sub $1 trillion. We've just sort of clawed our way back up. We can kind of see that there is some sort of level that we bounce from down here. Why are these lines so thin? Sorry, just a second. Let's make that's pretty white. Make it a little bit thicker. 2 is probably right. But you can kind of see, there. Pretty decent level. So we've lost that. We kind of pulled back. We really need this one to hold for us. And we're going to be looking at Ethereum in some detail later, because I think that is key to altcoin survival. I'm assuming that everybody can hear me, because I forgot to mention it. My mic was muted. But hey there, everyone. I will catch up with the chat in a moment. And then we got BitTensor. And again, so we lost that 215 level. I don't know why these lines never stay, but anyway, sitting around here, we came back down. Now this diagonal yellow line is actually a new line I just put on at the moment. And actually all I did was I just took this, because these are just clones of each other, just trying to get the same angle. And I just did exactly the same. And I promise you, I just lined it up prior to this with just these wicks and this base here. And it's kind of worked out as to where we currently stand at the moment. 2.5 days to go in the candle, so who knows where it could end up. But you can see the severity of the drop that we've experienced here. And we've lost effectively just over 50% of our value in the last 3 weeks. So again, I mean, I can't guarantee that the drop is over, but it does feel like we are oversold. We're probably due a pullback. And my estimation is maybe, again, 50% of that pullback, we get somewhere to sort of 230, 240. And we have a look. But the reality of it is, it's a long way to go back up to 300. And then we're back in the Gandalf line territory. So I'm not particularly overawed by BitTensor's price action as well, but it is not on its own. Altcoins are struggling across the board, unfortunately. Right, let's just have a look. I mean, I didn't put a poll up, but is there anyone actually watching right now that thinks we're not in a bear market, that thinks we're actually in a bull market, and this is just a pullback? Appreciate you might not want to name and shame yourselves, but just rhetorical questions. Have a think to yourself: do you genuinely believe that, given what we've had for as long as we've had? And if you do want to, I'd love to understand your rationale or thought process as to why, so I can challenge my understanding of where I think we are. Whilst you're considering that, a couple of news headlines. I'm not necessarily going through it, but I mean, Bitcoin still in a bull market. 4 monthly red candles in a row. We're in our fifth right now. And I mean, that says everything. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see them there. That just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in bull markets. It doesn't happen even in bear markets. The only time we did that I could find was back in 2018. For those of you there, absolute wild time that was. Kind of got us to the bottom though, but it was a wild time to be there. So 4 completed red monthly candles in a row. This one's only just started, but not exactly got off to the best start in the world. And it causes major concern. It has to. Even on the monthly time frame, we can see how far this has fallen. And we're going to be analyzing this a lot, but we might as well get used to it. We've fallen 42%. The definition of a bear market is 20%. Let's just say that crypto's a little bit more volatile. It's 30%. We're at 40%. 126,284 was the high. We touched 72 grand today. We lost 50 odd $1,000 in the space of 4 months, 5 months. I just don't know how anyone can really justify calling it a bull market anymore. Now, I'm not giving a time frame. Maybe we're at the bottom of this bear market. And I don't think that we are. But for those of you that are attending the cuddle, I'm going to go through that in a bit of detail. So I don't want to say too much now, but I don't think the timings are going to suggest right now that this is the turnaround pot. And I will be happy to be proved wrong. But no, I think we've still got a little bit more pain, unfortunately, to come. And we maybe even try and have a look and identify some levels on the higher timeframes of where we can turn around a little bit later on. But 4 red monthly candles in a row, it's not looking very good. Spot volume, it's at the lows. It plunges to the lowest level seen since the lows of 2024. We actually are below those. So there's no retail demand. Institutional demand is drying up. And I've argued for long enough now that institution investment is what has actually sort of carried us on our back through this cycle. And now we're finding actually nobody's interested right now. I admit precious metals have obviously taken a bit of a shine off that, but not over the last week or 4 days or what have you. But there just doesn't seem to be that much interest right now to turn this around. And unfortunately, what tends to happen is people are so afraid they just shut down, they shut off, they go away. And they don't come back until it reaches their psyche again because it's at a level that they got out or whatever. So that's got to change. That's got to turn around. But it's certainly something that we need to monitor. But with spot trading volumes dropping, it is an area for concern. I'm going to come back to the bottom of this article a little bit later on, I think. But I've seen this being talked about, and I don't think we can necessarily ignore it. Some ISM data came out. And why are people excited about this? Because they've watched Raoul Pol's 5-year cycle kind of theory, which has only really gained traction since, guess what? The top was in, Nobody was talking really about a 5-year cycle prior to October, November 2025. To be fair to Simon, actually, I have been at Cuddles where he's talked about this sort of 4.5, 5-year liquidity cycle. Don't get me wrong. But in terms of the mainstream crypto kind of outlook, nobody was talking about it. And to be fair to Raoul Pol, he is dying on this hill right now, and he's dining out on it because people are moving through. And again, whilst there may be some similarities, there's plenty more similarities with how the 4-year cycle is playing out than just one data point that everybody is trying to hold on to. But what was it that actually happened? Well, yesterday we had the ISM manufacturing PMI data come out. What did it say? It said we were at 52.6. Now, I'm sure every single person on this call and watching the recording later knows, because we've been following the ISM manufacturing PMI data for a long time, what that actually means. Basically, below 50, the economy is contracting. Above 50, it's expanding. What a great time to be alive. And, there are sentiments like this, and I'm not dissing Jesse here because there is some truth in what he's putting. Every single crypto bull run, 2013, 2017, 2021, happened when the ISM moved above 50. Yesterday we did hit 52.6. And so run it hot. This is it. This is the start of the bull market. But the problem that I have, what we've got here, we've got Bitcoin at the top, and then we've got this ISM manufacturing PMI down the bottom. You can see for pretty much the whole of the 2023, 24, 25 bull run, we were below 50, and yet we still managed to make an all-time high. We've now poked our head above 50, and it's time for Bitcoin to fly. And the issue I suppose I have with that is what Brett says in this tweet, and you can read it whilst I'm talking, is this is showing, the ISM data is effectively showing that we have a strong economy, or it's strengthening. And the issue there is we're waiting for the Fed to cut interest rates. Well, why would they cut interest rates if we've got a strong economy? Let's not even talk about the jobs data, which got cancelled today. We're just not going to ever hear about what's going on with the jobs data. I mean, that's just funny as anything. But this actually puts less pressure on the Fed to cut the rates. And I thought, until people cottoned on to the 5-year liquidity cycle with the ISM, that we were all hanging our hats on rate cuts. Rate cuts is what we needed to stimulate, the end of quantitative easing into quantitative tightening, ultimately put the money printer on. But if the economy is doing well, why do we need to put the money printer on? What's the issue there? And so this is, and nobody knows. Obviously, we've got a new Fed chair coming in. He's hawkish on data. He's been positive on Bitcoin in the past. He's not particularly great about precious metals. It's really throws in some confusion. I think everyone's trying to wait to really see what this guy has to say and what he's going to act. But ultimately, we've now got 4, 5, 6 weeks until the Fed make their decision. And when you actually look at the data, so this is today's data. The data came out yesterday. Yesterday, it was less than 90%. The data came out, the ISM PMI manufacturing data came out. It's gone up to 91% chance that we're not going to get a rate cut. I mean, I know it's only a 2% increase, but we're saying right now with 5 weeks to go, the information that we're betting on is giving us even less of an indication that we're going to get that rate cut that we apparently so desperately need to stimulate risk on assets. So I just don't necessarily buy it. Where is it? I get what people are saying. I get the excitement that is being held there. What I would need, unfortunately, and I'm not trying to kick the can down the road, is I need an outlier. So is this an outlier? Are we going to get consistent climbing of this? Then we can start talking about any sort of correlation that may happen. So we've had one print above it, and it was monumentally higher. I think, let's go back to, they were forecasting it to be 48.5, okay? So still an increase of 48.5. It leaped 4, I don't know if that's percent, but let's just call it 4% above what was forecast. This isn't just a strong reading. This is an astronomical one. And so we just need to, how's this play out? How is this working? Now we've got the services, ISM services PMI tomorrow. Let's see how that one comes about as well. But this is for me, a concern in inverted commas, a concern for us trying to get the Fed to cut the interest rates. Now, I understand that they need to refinance some debt and everything else, but if they're going to continue to go off the data, which is what Powell was doing, the data suggesting we don't necessarily need to at the moment. The jobs data is kind of saying that as well. Inflation is still coming down, but it's not quite got to their version of 2%. And so, yeah, we're in a tough position. And I know, we've had stealth QE with, government buybacks, etc. Was it 40 billion every 3 weeks or whatever? It's a drop in the ocean. 40 billion is a drop in the ocean. Hell, gold and silver lost $1.7 trillion in an hour on Friday. So, yeah, we are talking about a drop in the ocean there. And And the point that then people are trying to sort of make is that because the ISM is printing, we're going to finally see altcoins fly. And I didn't really know where I could fit this in. And maybe I'm speaking about it a little bit too early. In fact, I am. We'll come back to this a little bit later on. Let's move it down over here. So that's the Fed. Fear and greed, absolutely capitulating down at 17 at the moment. This thing's going to print even lower tomorrow because obviously what we've had today. So not looking great. ETFs, actually, you know what? We lost $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin via the ETFs last week. But yesterday we got 500 million of that back. Now, I have seen the Coinbase sort of tracker of wallet addresses that they do real time. It does seem to be that there is Bitcoin and Ethereum from BlackRock flying to Coinbase. I like to just wait till it's all calculated up so we know. But I am expecting some red today, just given the amount of Bitcoin that has flown to Coinbase. We'll have to just wait and see how that one pans out. But for me, again, not looking like a great picture right now. And we are seeing predominantly reds. That's the worry, isn't it? We got 3 days worth out of the last 3 weeks of net inflows. One of those was 6.8 million. Anyhow, so let's get on some more time frames. We'll have a look at some of the other data we've got out here. And then I'm going to give you my rationale and reasoning behind where I think we are in the market and why maybe it's taken me this long to finally actually call it. And what we can do about it. But we can see Bitcoin here at the moment when 12-hour time frame, we've got the fib levels that we've had since March 2024. This fib level is based off the 73,400 that we hit in March 2024. And guess what? Or 73,700. We got back to it. We finally got back to this fib level. And maybe this fib level, because it is the one, is what is going to help us lead to this next bounce. But we can see over the last week since we last spoke, Bitcoin came back down. We had a little bit of a flirt with the 272 level. Let me just try and move this without moving that. 83,000. It didn't hold for too long. We dropped through it. We cleared out that liquidity. We came flushing back down. And I know what you're thinking, Harry. Where's the rest of the data? The reality is I don't have it. Because when we go on, let's get rid of that. When we go on CoinAnk and look at derivatives, the maximum I can do is 6 months. We haven't been down at this level for a year, pretty much. So there's just no data down here for me to, to carve out. Maybe there's somewhere I can scroll back further than that. If there is, I'll have to try and find it. But right now, I don't have any levels for us to go back into. The only thing I can really do is just throw on the vectors, and we can kind of have a look what's forming here. And there's some sort of alignment to some of these. So, this is 12-hour versus sort of daily. So it's not going to be perfect. But it's going to give us some sort of indication. And it's kind of saying right now that actually we've got a pretty decent vector candle zone from 73 down to 70,000. The fact that we've dipped our toe into it may just give the market makers a little bit of an appetite of where they want to take this. That being said, over the last week or so, we have gone pretty aggressively, pretty hard. There's plenty of vectors, there's panic sellers, etc., or perps, being greedy purpers, leaving that opportunity for the price to be reversed, not to mention the fact that we have hit level 1 on the fib levels. So I'll sort of keep these on until we find. Let's just close this one now so I don't have to listen to that all the time. So I'll keep that on until I find a better website. But unfortunately, we are going to have to start looking about, some of these other levels down here. And I got to say, if I'm being brutally honest, and we are going to talk about, bear market bottoms, given how well this fib level has really worked out for us throughout the last 2 and a bit years, I really would be looking at these. Honestly, I hate that people are going to be, looking at 47K and worrying about it. But I think the reality of it is these key levels from anywhere from 73,000 down to 47. Hell, I'd even be an argument case for 40,000 because that was kind of the price of BTC at the start of the ETF launch. I think there's an argument to be had actually that some of these levels, and you throw in the fibs, the golden ratio 62, 59, 56. I think there's some levels that we need to honestly start asking ourselves some questions about. And if you are now sat on the side of USDT and you want to be patient, maybe waiting to see if some of these can ultimately play out. I think, we will end up talking about some of this a little bit later on. Sorry, I've kind of missed some of these questions. So let's just have a look at some of this comments before I move through. Brave enough to admit we're in a bear market late enough. Brave enough to admit we were late to calling it a bear market. And maybe we're calling it at the bottom. Maybe we finally waited so long in our calling it that actually the 2 weeks and the 3 weeks and the 4 weeks that turned into 8 weeks that we were waiting is now where the bottom is. But 5 months of falling over 40% of the value, I think gives you the answer there. Try to mention in Discord, but don't allow messages. Okay, that's for someone else. Even Jordan, where does one find info on dev coin allocation lockups? I'm wondering why none of the Pippin top wallets are selling. Probably because they can't sell. I don't know where you can find it in particular, but they may have some sort of, a bit like when you do an OTC deal, it's locked up for a certain amount of time. So when the coin is created and it's minted, bit like when we used to go through, altcoins, we'd have a look at the coin distribution. The developers and key investors would get it, and their lockup window might be for 3 years or whatever. So Reese, they may not. I don't know in particular. I'll have a look and see if I can post it. I mean, Pippin. I mean, it's a meme, so maybe they didn't go into as much detail of a white paper. But if they have, we might get a breakdown of how long they've got to lock it up for. So we can have a look there. Cheers, Dits. No, Josiah. Reese, I'm of the mind that most sensible move at this stage is to continue phasing out and exit and then sit on your hands for buyback in 12 to 18 months. Well, so typically bear markets are 12 to 13 months long. If we've already done 4-5 months of it, we're kind of looking September, October, November time of this year, finding a bottom. And so selling may go away, having another little effect as well, maybe getting back in at the end of the summer and just phasing in, even if it happens to fall back down, may not be a bad place to be. I would just say that if you are making the decision to get out, then I think that's actually the better time. One, it's less stress in terms of you don't have to monitor charts all the time. Just set some key levels and go, right, I'm going to start working it back in, and then just sort of take it from there. But I think if you have taken some out or you are taking some out, don't panic if you start to see things go up. You need to just take it on the chin and wait for breaks of resistance before you FOMO back in, because it is quite a nerving thing when you sell, worrying that potentially sold the bottom. Crypto's lost so much momentum and interest level. Another key sign, Much Moon, that we're in a bear market. Nobody cares. All anybody was talking about last year, 2024 into 2025, was Bitcoin and 100K and etc. Now nobody cares. You're right. It's lost so much interest. Maybe because other assets have taken a bit of a shine off. And I'm talking about Bitcoin. I don't see anybody talking about an altcoin. Nobody talks about an altcoin except for people in crypto who are in a particular altcoin. So yeah, it's definitely taken a kick in. Another, for me, key indication that we're probably in a bear market and there is that lack of interest. Erjan's put, so there's one thing that doesn't make sense to me, but I have looked into it. I wonder, there's one thing that doesn't make sense to me, but I've looked into it. I wonder why and how alt season happened before BTC's top. It's an interesting point to look at into some point. Did alt season happen before? I don't think that we've even had an alt season, if I'm being brutally honest. I really don't. I mean, you overlay. If I overlay, sorry that we're sort of distracting a little bit, but that's BTC, right? BTC USD. Let's just overlay it that way. I don't think, the reason I've done this, let me just grab this one and move it down. Everything's kind of moved at the same time, So this is total 2 in the bars. So this is, that's gone up at the same time that's gone up. This has gone up at the same time this has gone up. And then this has gone up at the same time this has gone up. And that doesn't even take into account the total 2's really done nothing percentage-wise compared to what BTC, because we never saw Bitcoin dominance drop. So I think the real question is, why didn't we have an alt season? I don't think we've had an alt season. We had a little bit of a meme season. But Alts did well in December 24 and November 24, but so did Bitcoin, you know. So yeah, I'm not sure. Interesting to see Bitcoin's recovering back to about 76 at the moment. Tau's about 200. We were down in the 180s and 72,000. So making a little bit of a bounce. So we get that volatility. So yeah, I'm not 100% convinced on that one, but oops. What chart was I actually on with this? Because it certainly wasn't this one. I don't know. Okay, never mind. Interesting level is below 2020 bear market. Alt season happened, but it was distributed because so many. I mean, yeah, we got 21 million plus alts this time instead of 22,000. Literally everything has gone up. R2K, gold, silver, Mag 7. We bled into other markets. I completely agree with that. Excluding BTC, we've had pump from meme coin degen season only. Only Sol really. ETH never raised an eyebrow. Well, that's it. I mean, Sol went from $8 to 300 or whatever it was. So it's done well as a big alt. Let's not kid ourselves. And you know, XRM, Dash, Zcash, they've all had stellar runs over the last few months. On stellar declines over this last month as well. But anyway, right, let's have a look. So let's talk about bear markets. And the biggest and an initial, and you know, you talk about trusting your gut. You know, what the one thing that I've always said: the break of the 50 EMA, it's where the bull market ends, and we broke it. And as soon as we broke it, we dumped hard the next week, and it was like, right, well, we'll just wait and see. And we ranged, and we did come back up, and we rejected from there. And I managed to get some sells at 94,000 and 91,000, but that was it. The break of the 50 EMA weekly time frame, number one, absolutely number one in terms of an indicator that we're potentially heading into a bear market. The fact that we rallied up to the 50 EMA and the 20 EMA, which happened to also cross it bearishly and rejected from it, huge indicator that actually that was a full rejection. That was a complete rejection. We talked about it in real time. We didn't really, you know, action it. I was out of alts by then. I'm happy with where my Bitcoin sits in terms of that, but I could have sold some a little bit higher. And then the last 3 weekly candles, the last 2 week candles, been pretty stellar drops. We had that sort of barrier 86,000, which you can kind of see on this red line. And then the real kicker has been closing below the sort of spring 25 tariff drop that we had down here. And we did close below it, and now it's a case of we are really struggling to justify that we're in a bear market solely based off the candles, solely based off price action. We have a look at some of the other things here. Again, I had to go back. Because when I brought this chart up, it was already drawn, and I was like, when did I do this then? So I went back into the VODs, and there it is, 18th of November 2025. This is when we drew this. This is when we started talking about it. And this is actually, here's the EMA. So this is the 50 EMA. I know it's in red now. So this is the week after we broke and closed below it. So that's probably why we were talking about it. But that's how long ago we were talking about it. And we started mentioning, look at these bearish divergence, similar to what we had in 2021, 2022 time period. We had that bearish divergent play out, which took us down into the bear market. We had exactly the same, 2023, 2024, 24 to 25. We had another weekly bearish divergence play out. We weren't sure when it was going to break, but it ultimately did break. And what is interesting is when we actually look down at the RSI and the weekly time frame here, we'd also drawn this 35.59 level, which was historically we've bounced from here and we've done quite well. And actually that week we did bounce from there, perhaps giving us a little bit of hope. But now that we've closed below it, every time we have been below it prior to that, even in March 22, I'm just circling these now, and then we'll bring this back down. You'll see where the charts sit. Oops. We're talking about bear markets, potentially bear markets bottoms, but talking about these things occurring in bear markets. Okay. And the question is that on it? So the RSI weekly time frame is kind of giving us an indication that we might well be hitting a bottom. Now, I think someone mentioned this in Discord. I can't remember who it was. Apologies, and I can't be able to go and check. The point I tried to make was, yes, okay, we are as low as where we were at the last bear market in sort of July of 2022. But what actually happened in July of 2022, we had a bullish divergence to get us out of it. So although we hit a low on the RSI over the next 4 months, yes, the RSI climbed out, but price continued to fall. As a matter of fact, we fell from 19,000 down to 15,000. Okay, so another 25% of falling occurred. So just because we're down that level doesn't mean that 75K, 76K, 72K is going to be the bottom. Even if the RSI climbs, we can quite easily see price falling further. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. I think it's worth, especially if you are not monitoring as much, to having the RSI on a chart somewhere, just to having a look at it. It doesn't give you a time frame, I'm afraid. It gives you just more of a, okay, that's reinforcing in my belief of wherever we currently sit. We have a look at dominance. We have a look at USDT dominance. Okay. I'd pre-drawn some of this from last time. I'll take it off just so we can kind of see what's happening here. But we were talking about this move down. We need to break 3.8, which we'd bounced from previously before, for us to have that alt season. And that didn't happen. And now where do we find ourselves? We find ourselves at 7%. We've been growing quite aggressively with USDT. So people are selling and going into the reserves of Tether. Another classic sign that we're moving into a bear market. And we talk about it again, you have a look here, 7% of the market being in USDT. When's that? Last time that happened? June 2022, deep in the bear market. We're talking about Celsius, 3 hours, a capital collapsing here, people just exiting quickly, moving into it. This is the level that we're getting to. Now, we are overbought on the RSI, if you will. So we may get a pullback. And we saw in the bear market 2022, similar kind of pattern, that pullback. So we may well see pullbacks to sort of like 5-6%, but we need to be breaking sub 5 for me to convince that we're out of a bear market. And so there's that factor there also, unfortunately, to consider. And then going back to the article I had on before about spot volumes being low, if you actually scroll down, here's a thing that sort of says, actually, we may not even be at the bottom. And I was going to use alphabetical charts, but unfortunately it's behind a paywall, and I wasn't paying $368 for a year subscription to show you something for 5 minutes, particularly now we're in a bear market and we need to tighten those, because my new job is only going to pay me maximum of $12.21 per hour. Pretty sure I will get $12.21 per hour because it's minimum wage. This must be for people under 16 or under 17 or whatever. But yeah, so I got to be not spending ridiculous amounts of money. But what is this chart actually having a look at? So this chart, which I'm going to show you on another chart in a moment, is basically saying, look, for Bitcoin's price to have officially bottomed, then two things need to happen. Short-term Bitcoin holders need to be underwater. They already are. The short-term Bitcoin holder price at the moment is 94,000, so they are underwater. The long-term holders need to start carrying losses. They haven't achieved that yet. I think the long-term holders level at the moment sits at like 48,000. It is going up, so as price goes down, that will go up and they will meet. But we aren't seeing long-term holders holding that much of a loss. Now, long-term holders, I can't remember how long it is, 150 days or 150 weeks. I think it's 150 days. But the vast majority of the long-term holders are much longer than that, and they're balancing out those that were 6 months ago. Because 6 months ago, price was at 74,000, kind of where we are at the moment. So we need those to sort of come back down and meet. And once those two occur, then we can start talking about the bottoms. And I don't know if this is going to blow up very well, but hopefully you can see it. I might be able to zoom in a little. No, I can't zoom in any better. I've got some other charts. It doesn't show it as well as this, unfortunately. But you can see in 2012, we have the blue line. So the white line is BTC. If you can see this, great. If you're on a phone, you might struggle. BTC price action. The blue line is short-term holders realized price. The yellow or orange line is long-term holders realized price. And then red dots are bear market ends, green dots are bull market beginnings. And what we're looking for is when the blue line and the yellow line effectively cross. That's when it signifies kind of the bottoms. You look in 2012, it's almost bang on. There was a little bit of crossing and uncrossing and recrossing, but that was within the space of 28 days. And then you have a look at 2014, 2015. We had that cross pretty much signifying the bottom. We went flat for 3 months. Then those recrossed again, and it was the start of the 2016, 2017 bull market. Then we go to 2018. We had that cross happen in pretty much end of December, beginning of January 2019. The cross then uncrossed itself in April of 2019, which started the 2019, 2020, 2021 bull run. And then similarly in 2022, we had the cross. I think it was around about October for the bullish side, the bearish side of it, and then it reopened itself, if you will, in February. So we haven't had that cross. There's still a bit of a decent gap at the moment, and that could take, unfortunately, a couple of weeks for that to manifest itself. And again, using something like this, that's going to only really speed up if price starts to decrease quite quickly. And here's a very similar, I've had to do it on 2 charts. So this is the long-term holders supply loss. So you've got the realized price again in blue, and you can see at the moment, it is 40,000. Sorry, I thought that was 48. And you can kind of see capitulation is when the red dots start to occur. We haven't quite had that yet, but you can see on this one here, all the times that capitulation occurs is when we were deep into bear markets, or the bear markets were starting. We're starting to get to the bear mean, as in this is starting to print, and we're heading in that direction. We can see that that's, again, only really ever prints in the downtrends of bear markets. So that's for long term. And you go on the short term, obviously it's a lot more data to see here because not as many days people need to hold it for, but you can kind of see that this, the cautious or the mean, and then the top heavy dot, which is the deep into the bear kind of side of it. All of these really only occur when we are in a downtrend. Now, I will accept, because we ranged during 2024 and 2025 for so long, that this actually does play out in those periods. But in those same periods, we went from 73,000 to 49,000, and from 110,000 down to 73,000. So again, some significant drops there. But again, this is playing out at 94,500 at the moment. But you can kind of see, if I were to be able to merge those two, this is what the chart would look like. And that's kind of printed it. I will screenshot this afterwards. I'll post it in Discord. So for those of you that are on a phone, you might get a better chance to have a look at it. It's just another one of them overlaying. It kind of shows you the same detail. When both of these are getting high, we're in a bear market. And what we're seeing, you can't quite see because the blue's really thin, but it is. I can't even click it. There it is. That's the first. So this is starting to spike up along with the long-term holders there. Anyhow, right, let's move swiftly on. Not sure why I've got this chart here. We've already done that one. And so it takes us to the 4-year cycle, and then I'll look at some of the other comments people have raised. And I didn't save it last time, but obviously I put a red box on here, and it really feels like this has fit. You know, people talk about the 5-year ISM and the liquidity cycle. My point is, prior to that, back in 2022, 2023, everyone was talking about Q4 2025 being the top, and then we'd head down. And what actually happened? Because as far as I understand it, and I'm not perfect to this either. I'm not saying I was right on it straight off, but 6th of October 2025, which is Q4, we hit 126,000. So tick. I mean, we did. We didn't get a blow off top. We didn't get a euphoric top. And because of that, people decided, oh, well, it's not the top yet. We didn't get an alt season. It's not the top yet. But they ignored the fact that the prime thing that we were all looking for was a top in 2020, Q4 2025. So at the bare minimum, what we should have done is gone, right, it's now the 1st of January. What happened in Q4 2025? Oh, we did actually hit a top. So why weren't we going 4-year cycles? People are writing off the 4-year cycle when actually everything that was expected of it. And I tell you, when we go into the cuddle, there'll be a lot more detail in terms of timings and everything else. But almost to the T, everything that we expected to happen happened. And yet we didn't believe it because we didn't make any money from it. We as being the collective retail crypto. because we didn't make any money from it. Nah, this time it's different. Just like, if you're new to crypto, this is your moment. But I tell you, in November 2021, this time's different. 100K's on the cards. In 2018, 2017, 2018, this time's different. ICO's got our back. And yet every time the 4-year cycle has worked, we just find it's human nature to find excuses for why we don't believe that the top is in. So my view is completely that was the top. The top is in. Okay. Now, how long the bear market is going to last for, and could we say that this is the bottom? Of course, this could be the bottom of the bear market. Absolutely. I can't rule that out. But that doesn't, just because if this turns out to be the bottom, doesn't mean that we haven't experienced a bear market. Of course we have. And I think this is where people like Raul, I think, are going to get a fairly easy get out of jail free card, because they're saying 2026 is the year of Bitcoin. Now, is it? Because let's just say the bear market happens, we go all the way down to 50K. Okay. And then September, October, November, we start to rally and we end the year 75K. Okay. We've made 50% back already by the end of the year from where the bottom was. Now, to me, that's great. Start of 2026, perfect. We've had the bear market and we've even started to see the reversal out of it. Tick, Bitcoin's done its job. And look, we ended the year with a rally. It's worked well. And they'll say, see, I told you Bitcoin was going to have a strong 2026 because we've made 50% gains from the lows. I'm making up the numbers here. But I think that ignores the fact that we've also lost potentially 70% on the way down. And they still would get it. It's fine because the liquidity market's worked out. Money printers do turn on by the end of 2026. See, and that money manages to filter into the markets, and risk-on's back booming again after a short recession. And everything kind of fits the narrative that they've been saying, but they just glaze over the fact that they held on to an asset for 6 to 9 months whilst it burnt to the ground, just so the last 3 months they can benefit from it. So I think, and it is only me thinking here, meager only me, that is it's not a well thought out excuse building. They genuinely believe in the 5-year cycle, absolutely fine. But I think it just presents with them a beautiful little, see, that's exactly what's happened. And don't worry, we'll just miss the bit in the middle there of people, losing their jobs and losing their portfolios and everything else. And we'll just talk about the success at the end, and then off we go. When actually, if you believe in the 4-year cycle, we are going to probably find a bottom Q3, Q4 of 2026. And then we'll climb out of it, just like we've done with all the other cycles. So, hey, maybe I'll be wrong, but that's where I'm seeing. And, I kick myself for not calling the top when I did. I've always been a believer in that. And even if you look at the 4-year economic cycles, there's a very good chance that some of these markets are looking very toppy. I mean, gold and silver. I mean, gold was $5,800 on Friday. It got down to $4,700 earlier on this week, maybe even today. Silver was $125. It was down in the 70s yesterday. Massive swings of volatility within it. Whilst I would give the S&P a bit of a kick in, it's still pretty close to its all-time high. But, at some stage, it does still feel quite toppy. And, we've all sort of said, expect a flash crash of some sort, and then a resumption during this year. And I think that still aligns in with where we're looking. I think last week, the S&P made an all-time high of 7,000. NASDAQ looking very similar. And interesting, the VIX has spiked up today. So could see some volatility and some realigning of that over the next few days as that comes back down. So that's kind of where I see things. I've just seen some more questions fly through. Do you know where you might find a heat map of Pippin? Absolutely no idea. The problem you're going to have with that is, well, let's have a look. So I don't believe that CoinAnk will have one, but it might. And even if it does, it's a meme coin. I don't know what the trading volume is on decentralized exchanges. And so that could be your problem. Um, can we find? It's got Fartcoin. You never know. Pippin, here you go. There is one. There you go. So if you go on CoinAnk, you don't even have to have a account for this. Let's put it on the monthly. Let's see the most data we can get. It's not that old. There you go. There's a little bit of noise around about 26 cents. Obviously, the majority is in and out. So people have been shorting this for a while, turning it around. It's got a long way to go back up. There's a little bit of noise in and around 26, 27. I mean, you just have a mess around. I'm not, weekly, you're going to find a bit of a clearer picture, etc. But yeah, CoinAnk. It'll give you some of the details. You can have a look, see how that fits for you. But the problem you're just going to have is I don't know how long this has been recording it. Looks like only a month. So how useful that's going to be, I'm not sure. Simon believes markets should top on euphoria, but really the majority of stock markets have topped on apathy. Yeah, I think this time has been. And just going on to that, I mean, we talk about markets topping. Let's just clear some of this. Let's just get rid of all of this and indicators. Don't need any of that. So if we have a look at 2022, sorry, 2021. So we made 64,000. We pulled back to 30,000. And we topped at 69. Okay. I don't really remember it being euphoric. Everyone was screaming 100. We were going to make it more. We only made $5,000 more. We made 8%. 8% increase, was it? Let's work it out. I think it was 8%. It wasn't a huge move, is what I mean. 6.6%, 7%. Okay. It felt great because we went from 30,000 to 69,000 relatively quickly. But in the grand scheme of it, not too much. You go then to have a look at where we were here, whether you want to take it from 110,000 to the top. So, where we peaked in January and then we got to 15%. So, nearly 3 times as much of an increase in our position. But I think there's very similar there. I don't remember 2021 being euphoric. I think people were excited because altcoins were doing well. Perhaps that was the way the euphoria was. But in terms of Bitcoin, everyone was talking about 100K. This was kind of a letdown, to be honest. It was only, back in 2023 when we kind of appreciate how high it had got. And so I think that's quite a similar sort of experience of it. And so, yeah, I don't think you necessarily need euphoria. Now, you want to talk about euphoria? Gold. I mean, look at this. I mean, I tell you what, could be a pretty decent long for gold. I was wrong, by the way. It went from 5,600 to 4,400. I mean, even for gold in its last week, that's pretty wild. That was a 21% swing over a matter of days. It was pretty much over the weekend. So yeah, that's euphoria. That sort of blow off maybe of it just moving. And if you put silver, even wilder, sort of the euphoria that went with that, potentially a sort of a blow off there. I think it's a brave person to try and long these at the moment, but I wouldn't be surprised if we all in 6 months' time wish we'd bought that dip when it dropped back down to 85 or 70 as it got down to. So yeah, I just can't. So Bijan's, I just can't accept the 5-year cycle. No proof that we're going to that. Every 4 year, people try to kick the can down the road. Yeah, at the moment, I think that's right. Raoul Paul's been saying it for a while. No one cared about it in November, even after October, the high. And then it suddenly gained a little bit of traction December. And then it's picked up a lot of traction this year. And that kind of more feels for, hopeism, if that's a word, or I don't know what the other word I'm thinking of is, but sort of like trying to hold on to your sanity because you were wrong and you can't accept that you were wrong, whatever that is. ISM helps manufacturing data, which might help employment data in 6 to 12 months' time when the bottom is in. 4-year cycle traders like Bob Lucas, Tony Bull, Camel have sold nearly the top and they have outperformed. Yeah, not sure about Camel. Bob Lucas, he sold. Ben Cohen, he sold. Bob Lucas, if you ever want to follow him, and I think I actually have it saved here. It doesn't cost you anything, but where is it? Maybe I don't have it. I'll have to find it. If you watch his videos, um, I don't have it. You watch his videos, you can. He just has a Google sheet that he just follows his portfolio, and you can see how much he's in and out, how much he's selling, etc. So, I mean, how true it is, I don't know, but I seem to think Camel. I don't think he's sold yet, has he? Or he might have sold a little bit. But he was kind of waiting for a weekly cycle low confirmation. I mean, forgive me if I'm wrong there. Anyway, right, that's enough about that. Let's actually get into some lower time frames, and we've been rattling on for an hour. Look, this I will just say, I'll caveat with this. What I'm talking about now will be the polar opposite of what gets discussed on Thursday, and that's absolutely fine. But I'm entitled for my opinion, and that is where my opinion is. Sorry, I didn't go back to these questions. Let's make sure I've covered it all. What's your taking RT right now? We've been told 3 to 6 months away. So this is from James. Now that shifted 2 to 5 as we're in February. In fairness, all time has been materially wrong for over 2 years, which naturally makes people question how much confidence to place in the latest one. At the same time, Simon said QE is effectively required for the next major move. That's right. Historically, QE hasn't been reduced until rates are around 1%. Again, another correction, another correct thing there. Or lower, and we're clearly not. I don't know what the rand bit is, but okay. So how are you reconciling 2 to 6 months horizon, both with the macro reality and the track record today? Well, 6 months time from here is August. We might well be finding a bottom then. But see, this is my, because we're at 74,000. If Bitcoin gets to 100 grand in the next 3 months, are we in a bull market? Or are we only in a bull market when we beat the all-time high? Because I would say if we're in a bull market, we need to be making higher highs and higher lows. So we have to break that 126 at some stage. I don't personally see that happening in 6 months. I would be delighted if it does, but I don't personally see that. And I think you've sort of said how am I reconciling the 2 to 6 months. I don't think I've ever stated the 2 to 6 months. But I've said there, I think we're in a bear market. I think the bear market is set. 4-year cycle runs until it breaks. It didn't break, okay? It didn't. Everything we needed it to do hit. So now that should mean that the bear part of that 4-year cycle is in play. That's typically 12 to 13 months long. So you're looking maybe late September, October, November. And that's just for the bottom. Then we climb out. Crypto R's put, would you mind running through the best Tau exit point? I will show you that in a moment. I believe this is a bear market. I have ideas of an exit, but realistically, what should we look for as an ideal exit? Also, do you believe it would be wise to make this decision at this stage? Appreciate it's not financial advice, but unfortunately, losing faith. And we're ignoring every single TA sign that it's game over. So again, I am not in subnets, never been in subnets, don't understand what subnets are doing from a price point of view. So I have no idea, Bitcoin and BitTensor are falling hard. I have no idea what the alpha tokens are doing. Maybe they're rallying massively and you guys are all doing okay because your staking rewards or whatever they're called are offsetting the losses you're having from your dollar value, your portfolio. I don't know that. So, that is where it is. In terms of, Simon's made it very clear that he is just all in the BitTensor ecosystem. And I think we talked about it last week. He can, weather a 2-year drought. I believe he can. And, he is not looking at what the price is going to be necessarily in 3 months' time because he's all in on this ecosystem and developing that ecosystem. And so if that takes, I'm sure he doesn't want it to, but if that takes 2 years, 4 years, 10 years, then, that's where he's currently aligned. So I think it's just, the point is that we're traders whilst he is now a venture capitalist. QE seems 8 to 10 months away. I would say, for its effect to win. Okay. Right. So I think I covered those in my 60-minute chat. Right. Bitcoin, lower time frame. So on the daily, it's not even that low. I mean, just look at it. We are now, that's what I didn't post. Let's just throw it on. Just for shits and giggles. Remember we were asking, I think Erjan put, what was it we held on to? We held on to the 100 EMA, and there it is. That's what broke. That was what was holding us strong, and it broke last week. I mean, there you go. There you go. Right. Sorry, that was the last bit there. All right. So 1 day time frame on the usual charts. Look at the RSI. Even on the daily, we are oversold. Okay, it has been a shit show. We have fallen hard. We fell this hard in November, and we managed some sort of bounce. So, going on to Crypto R's comment of when's the time to sell. I know this is Bitcoin, but use the RSI as at least some sort of sense check. I want to get out of my position. That's fine. What's the best place to get out of my position? Is it after 3 weeks of continuous falling with the RSI absolutely in the gutter? Well, let's have a look at what happens in the past. So the last time it happened, we did see a rally, and there's no guarantee of how much this rally is going to be. But, a good rule of thumb is if you want to get out, absolutely get out. Where's my pen? Here. When the RSI is a bit higher, it's back up here. We may not know what that equates to. It may only equate to 86,000. But that's fine. So when the RSI, I do believe we will get a relief rally. When the RSI starts to reset, have a look at where the price is. Is the price running into any sort of major, or has the price already rejected? If it has, ideal opportunity to get out. And that works for BitTensor as well as it works for Bitcoin. So we are low on the RSI. Okay, that is worth saying. What are we seeing for everything else? We have left some trails in the speed at which we have fallen over the last 5 days has left plenty of vector candles in our wake, which again adds to at least some magnetism for the price to come up. What is standing in our way though? Well, we got that 86,000 level we talked about, which ties in with the 100 EMA on the weekly time frame, but also pretty much with the sort of base of this range that we had for the best part of 2 and a bit months. We have the 800 EMA, the 10 EMA, the 50 EMA, the 20 EMA, all pointing down, all ahead or above where price action needs to be. The 50 EMA, let's look, the 10 EMA since the all-time high has pretty much been something that we have been drawn back to consistently. And there was a period during the last crash where we stayed away from it for about 10 days. And we've been away from it 6 days at the moment. Doesn't mean it has to be 10 days, obviously, but we generally end up coming back to that. That is sitting around about 80,000 at the moment, tying in with the 800 EMA. Even for a short-term painful relief, we could head there. 50 EMA is what I'm actually interested in. Currently sitting about 88,000. I think by the time we probably get there, it's going to coincide quite nicely with the 86,000 level that I have talked about. And again, when we have a look at, and there's a lot of stuff on this chart, I want to leave it on because I haven't spoken about it yet. I'm going to throw a fib on. I'm not interested in the fib levels, but the middle of the fib level obviously is the 50% line. So if you have a look, the top that I just marked there at 98,000 to the base, which is 73,100 on this chart. Yep. The 50% level, so the 0.5, that's the 50% level, 85.5. So, we always talk about, wait for the 50% pullback. 50% pullback currently lining up with the 20 EMA at the moment, but also 50 EMA, could it get there? And I also just think you talk about confluences. There's this trend line here, the yellow one I've drawn. There's this trend line from all-time high down here. And it's going to get a bit of a squeeze, sort of 87, 86,000. I think there's a nice area there, 50% pullback, vector candles to come back and recover it, that we can find that relief, reset the RSI, and then it's decision time. We either break it, and whilst we won't be jumping for joy, we can start thinking about new levels that we can try and take, or we reject it and we start moving our next move down. So, it's a marathon, not a sprint, unfortunately. We could be just range for 2 months like we did before. Up here, down here, up here. We could just end up doing that, and then we finally give the ghost and we fall away. That's volatility we can play with, but it's just something we've got to bear in mind. So I'm really looking, maybe not even a strong, but a reversal to reset, and everything I'm looking at is here. 50% recovery of vector candles, 50 EMA, big major trend line. So many levels that we have to break through with any level of conviction before we can start having that conversation. So that's what you should be targeting. It's good to see we're almost at 77,000 now. So, it's could turn out to be a hell of a day. Altcoins are actually going green. So, maybe we're starting to see that relief now coming through. I'm going to clear these just so we can see what we're doing when we go into 4-hour time frame. And again, 4-hour time frame, we were in the go. We managed a little bit of relief. We're coming up now, and as good as this move has been over the last 4 hours, we still haven't cleared a 20 EMA yet. 100 the 50 EMA 82,000, the 200 EMA 87,000. These are some of the levels that we're gonna have to get through, and I need to see it breaking with vector candles. At the moment, we're vector candling in and rejecting. The only time we break anything is a red vector candle on the way down. So nice to see that we are recovering some of this, but the daily open, let's be realistic here, was nearly into 79,000. So we've not even got ourselves back to the daily open as of yet, but we are seeing ourselves climb out, and there is a little bit of a bullish divergence on the RSI forming. There's lower and lower. This is going higher and higher. So maybe we do get to see that break. So again, might be getting yourselves in a position to find an exit. And as I said, don't just exit because it's gone up. Exit when it reacts, rejects, whatever. That's when you come out. So you're not going to get the full meat of the move, but you're going to get yourself better than getting out at 72,500. I mean, those that did panic sell 2 hours ago will be kicking themselves, won't they? So yeah, patience. Sadly, it's all about patience. Sorry, hell of a lot. Historically, they moved together. Sorry, this one. Crypto miners are holding up well. Yeah, they're still strong, some of them, which is surprising given BTC's price action. I don't really follow miners too much. Maybe I should. Historically, they'll move together. This time round, the BTC miners have moved north and BTC has moved south, which is odd. Yeah, that's something maybe we need to explore and look into. Reese's, but Bob Lucas has been consistent on the money, been following that Google sheet since 2018, and it's been very, very few edits. Currently, he sold about 50% of sales targets for 105 and 110, not hit yet. I think he's very happy, though, he would never sell 100% if I remember following it right. He's always kept some back. Bob Lucas, yep, fine. Targets to sell, then weekly cycle based back around 50K. Okay, well, there we go. He's eyeing up Circle stock at $25, which looks juicy there. Yeah, don't talk to me about Circle stock. I'm the guy who bought 120. I also bought a 60. Hey, it's a long-term hold. That's what I'm saying. I do think stable coins will do all right. Maybe I just was a bit too eager. What did I say? Wait for a bear market. Tony the Bull has some good charts showing alts were bleeding into the RTK. We're going to talk about something in a moment about alts. Green, there's the color you don't see every day in the crypto space. Yeah, okay. So that's sort of where it is on the 4 hour. Let's just go straight into BitTensor. So daily time frame with BitTensor. Without rehashing everything, the one thing we didn't want to see was that, because we were breaking below the low. Okay, that's what we didn't want to see. Let's get rid of this now. And we've now broken below it, so we are continuing the downtrend. Okay, now we didn't. What did we close at? 88.29. We are lucky because we closed here at 183. So we haven't quite made the long-term low that we made in April of 2025. We're pretty close, but right now there's an argument to be made. However, we are pretty darn close to that. So still looking particularly poor. I hate to say it, but that's the reality of where it is. Then again, even on the daily time frame, we did dip into oversold territory. We're starting to climb out to that. Similar to BTC, vector candles have formed on the way back down. I see two levels that I'd be identifying. 215 is an obvious one, given that was support and resistance back in December of last year. The other area that I'd be looking at is the 50 EMA, around about 250 kind of level. Maybe it spikes through to the top of the cloud around about 260. For me, I got out 294, I think it was. So I'm not really buying in. If I see an opportunity for a long, I'll take it. I'm kind of done with it otherwise. But let's be realistic. It has to break 300. And if we're going to be realistic, it has to break 315 before we can get any form of excitement. We've pretty much formed a new low for the asset. We were $5 away from that new low. I'm expecting a relief bounce. When we get down to these levels, we normally bounce. Now, previously, we bounced all the way to 500 or 400 or whatever. Our biggest battle is breaking 300. Now, to do that, we've got two levels that we need to get through. And it can do it. Absolutely, it can. And Sam's talking about bringing his $100 million into the ecosystem. Maybe he'll do it. But we've got those levels that we really need to sort of consider where it's going. But crypto R, sorry. If you're looking for exits, again, similar to what Bitcoin, I would be waiting to just see how this resets. Do we reject from the 10 EMA and we just come back down? Do we get to the 20 EMA and we come back down? Get to the 50 EMA, do we come back down? Do we manage to break above the 50 EMA, hold above it? So just wait for that rejection confirmation. But they would be the levels 215, 250-ish I'd be targeting as an exit. 4-hour time frame. Again, we're starting to see a potential W formation. We can see we're very quickly we've gone from oversold to sort of a neutral position there without really developing much in terms of price. And again, that 50 EMA is kind of sitting at what's 210, 215 kind of area. So that's going to be a decent barrier. We have hit it in the past. We generally reject from it when we do. Pretty much for the last 4 weeks, every time we've hit it, we've rejected. So we need to break it. We need to break it with a vector candle. We need to build off it. And I want to break it and then sit above 215. We lose it. We start losing those. It is time to talk about where it could go. The obvious one's 262. That was the base of the big drop, the wick down back in April 25. And then after that, there's nothing until 100. And I put a post in Discord about I'm not really setting any buys unless we get sort of 80 to 120. I wasn't joking about that. I don't want that. Well, I do now, but I appreciate how difficult that may be. But just in the way this thing has been trending over the last 2 years, I can see it. If we're going to have a bear market, we're going to see pullbacks. We're going to see alts get obliterated. I can absolutely see it. And I just want to show you this chart that I had that I was going to show you earlier on. So this is from Ben Cohen, and he's talking about the Advanced Decline Index, okay? And basically what the ADI does is it just messages how many assets are going up versus how many assets are going down, okay? That's the crux of it. Don't really need to know too much more about it. We've got Bitcoin in the blue line, and then we've got altcoins in the red. And they're just against Bitcoin. They have just been declining over time. And yes, you get the outliers. It doesn't feel like there's any particular alt season that's been built into this. And I'm not saying that BitTensor can't be an outlier. It has been an outlier back in October. But, it's working against us, isn't it? It's what I'm saying. And so I think that's just something we need to bear in mind. This is effectively Bitcoin versus Total 2. That's what this chart is showing. Bitcoin versus Total 2. And that's been the result. Total 2 has struggled. So that's where it sits for me. I need to get rid of that. I need to shut that down. Go away. Okay, perfect. I said I wanted to have a look at Ethereum because I think that holds the keys to a lot of things. So what's Ethereum done? We've come down. We've hit this bottom 222. We've hit it a couple of times now. Why is that important? I'm going to put I'm going to put it on the daily so it's a bit easier to see. Is this a linear? It is. Ugh. Sorry about that. It's on linear chart, not logarithmic. This line might not make sense at all. It doesn't really. I suppose there's still some sort of... you go all the way back to 2024. We have 2,200. Bit of noise at the shoulder on the way up. The dips down through September 24 before the Trump rally. Then we had... the inauguration and tariff decline, which tried to hold some support, came back through, retested it before moving back up. So that's kind of the level we were looking at. We've just come back and we've retested this. We are finding a fairly decent bounce. What I said about low tests in a falling market, they're not always worth considering, but if you do look at the RSI, we are very oversold at the moment. Again, wouldn't necessarily be surprised to see a move up to maybe $3,000 again, all the way back up. We're certainly even 2,600 at the 10 EMA kind of level, but I think we could get back to the 50 EMA with a bit of a solid momentum there. I think that'll probably tie in with a Bitcoin getting back up to around about 86. But generally, in terms of the fall that we've experienced from its high. Where was its all-time high? This thing has fallen nearly 60%. And if this is the largest altcoin out there, it's basically a representation of altcoins. It's already fallen 60% from its high. What do we say altcoins typically do? 80 to 90, 95%. There's an argument to be made that actually this thing could go lower than my chart is even showing. Whoa. I mean, it's actually 85% back to 700. And it's because it never made an all-time high much bigger than the previous one. So that could be interesting to look at. That wasn't really why I was there. But I just want to sort of suggest that before we had this bounce here, the point I was trying to make with this line is it's kind of make or break. Because yes, okay, we've left some vectors to the north now with all of these red candles, but look how juicy that green candle is there. And this comes about from last year. We had this summer ETH rally, and there was one stark candle that went from sort of like 1800 to 2200. And that's this vector candle here, which we were right on the tips of getting. Maybe the market makers are just going to try and take some of this first before a rejection. Oh, not drawing. Take some of this first before a rejection is through. But this looks very tasty now in terms of a level to attack. And again, ETH suffers just because it's such a big proportion of it. It's going to drag a lot of the rest of the markets down with it. In terms of things like XRM and a few of the other ones, they've come back down to the 200 EMA, and I'm in this position. It's a bit like Pippin, resting on the 800 the 200 EMA there, and you're sort of like, do we take the chance? And it feels like it's a good trade setup to be had, and I think I probably will go again with Pippin. XRM, it's now down at this level. If it can hold it and move up, I think I just wait for confirmation here, because it's still a fairly decent move to get back even up to the 10. That's a sizable move, 10% with leverage. We're not quite in oversold, if you can see down the RSI, which kind of makes me think it could still fall further. And so maybe there's a bit more risk there. Again, with Pippin, daily time frame not down at oversold yet. There could still be more falling to come. When you have a look at some of these other altcoins, I mean, Dash again, not down there, but BNB, Ethereum, Casper, Link, Near. Near's not even giving me. It's giving up the ghost. There we go. Near, Solana. The rest of them have all fallen into oversold territory, but those ones there, because they were a little bit hotter prior to it, not quite got there yet. Maybe there's a little bit more pain to come in terms of on the way back down. Zcash, not quite there either, because it had such a stellar move up. So definitely some things to have a look at. In terms of some of the other things that we normally touch on, we've done talk, so we've done Bitcoin dominance. Oh, I posted this. This is the hope. We're all CME believers, and it's true. It's not on this chart. I must have saved it on another chart. But can't I find a rectangle? Here we go. This is what we were holding on for. 78,000 to 84,000 is the CME gap. We're starting to recover some of that now. That could be the move. You talk about the moving from from oversold territory and then a reflective move up as a relief rally. Well, closing that CME gap, taking us to some of these EMAs, could be the perfect antidote. And we get to sort of 84,000, we close that CME gap. People are going to start talking about we've recovered, we've made it. But have we really made it? I mean, we were talking about breaking 97,000 to being making it. 84,000 still 13 grand away from it. So yes, that would be great to see. Again, be really keeping an eye on price action and some rejection levels there as to what our next action should be if and when we do get to those. But that is something to keep an eye on. NASDAQ, yeah, we kind of talked about. So nearly its all-time high, 26. It's had its pullback with the 50 EMAs catching it. Google earnings report comes out tomorrow. That'll be an interesting one. So, Mag 7, seeing how that's sort of helping everyone go through. AMD, I think, tomorrow as well, actually. So that could be an interesting one. That might be after the close today. I forget. But the S&P, 7,000 is the top. We're at 6,910. It does feel like we had a decent fall today, but not too bad. We talked about gold, silver, platinum, fine. Circle, yep. This thing's falling. So I'll just keep DCAing in. NVIDIA, I think OpenAI said something about not liking their chips or something. So maybe there's an issue there, but still, it's sort of hanging about. It's just ranged quite nicely. Probably a bit of decent price support here. Palantir had a good earnings report, so that moved it up to date. Their earnings came out yesterday, so there's a gap to be filled, but 200 EMA has bounced from it today. Tesla, again, doing well. QBTS, all right. Coinbase, again, falling hard. I didn't even bother talking about it in the news, but there were some files, emails that came out with the Epstein drop, which didn't implicate, but kind of suggested that he had some early involvement with Coinbase. Maybe there's a bit of fallout in terms of that. So I didn't really dig too much into it. Microsoft, I mean, Bill's been in the ringer for some of the stuff that we've seen from him, but it kind of fell before then. And then MicroStrategy, woof. Yeah, this thing is falling. And, there's people talking about, MicroStrategy's underwater. It's 76,000. Okay, they're just over water now. 76,000 is their average buy. The way it's structured, I think this thing could go all the way down to zero before they'd be in trouble. So don't buy into that narrative. MicroStrategy gets written off just about as much as Bitcoin does. Astrid's still monumentally climbing up. Say no more about that one, but I think some people in RT have suggested there's quite low liquidity. So yeah, but a strong move. Smarter Web Company, it's now listed on the London Stock Exchange. So that today was its first day. Obviously, that uses, I mean, it's not business isn't Bitcoin, but it has a Bitcoin treasury. So you can get it at Langsdown, Hargreaves and Langsdown. So, people that are wanting to try and find some pension culpable Bitcoin related companies, smart web companies there. Not suggesting you buy it. I'm just saying it's now available. TauX is where it is. Tau BTC. Okay. R2. Taunu, my thoughts on it, but I want to see where it's done. So yeah, the delisting did not help. That fell another 50%. Just stress caution. Last 24 hours, there's been 3 transactions of $600. And this is where I currently sit. This is it. This is the how everything stands. So I'm now 70% in cash, 30% still in BTC. Business is still 100%. Matter of fact, I still bought Bitcoin yesterday for the business. I almost sold. I almost thought I'll sell, but I just reminded myself that actually this is why I do it. This is why I'm having the business side of it, is to take the emotion out and just have that standard purchase every time. When it's high, I buy. When it's low, I buy. I just get more of it. And so I made the decision not to sell. Will I live to regret it? Who knows? But this is a much longer term play. Yes, do I wish I didn't have as much BTC in? Of course, but it is what it is in terms of where that sits. The last 10% I sold or whatever was around about 84,000. I'll go and have a look on the exchange I use to find out the exact figure, but it's around about there Saturday when I decided to move it. And other than that, I think that's probably it. Look, it's been a bloodbath of a last couple of days. Price movements like this are never easy to swallow. Very difficult when you're still in these assets that are falling and you're balancing that emotion of, am I selling too late? Risk to reward. What happens if it turns around, etc. Other people telling you it's still a bull market, people telling you it's a bear market. It drives you through. I don't bring this up to, try and cause that confusion, but at least I get you to try and challenge your thought process behind it. Whatever you decide to do, own that decision. And if you are now thinking bearish, don't just go, right, well, Harry said it, the call's ended, I'm going to sell. Use what we've talked about in this call to then go and investigate yourself, and also to try and find some better levels to get out, and just phase out if that's how you want to do it. And don't sell everything just in case you are wrong. But bear markets for me are probably, the best time in terms of, if you manage to get out, bear markets are brilliant because you can then, start thinking about how I can be better at it, and then start to buy back in. The point then is, it's like in a bull market, not get too greedy at the top. In the bear market, not get too greedy at the bottom. Just start edging in to the market, and don't assume you'll get the exact bottom, but don't wait like we have waited 4 months to officially call it. And maybe I'll catch some flack for it, and I'm fine with that. But I'd be delighted if if the bear market ended then, and I was able to get back in, and we just resumed how it went. But the sentiment over the last 5 months has been different. I think that is a fact that can rarely be disputed. I think even the most hardened bull would be hard pushed to not say that the last 4 or 5 months have not been a bear market, even if they then believe the bear market ends in 24 hours time. So much evidence suggesting that we're in that bear market. I'm going to leave it at that. We will be around on Thursday. There will be another charting call on Friday. Got the cuddle a week on Saturday, so I will do just the Tuesday call, no Friday call, and I'll be at the cuddle. There are plenty of tickets available for those of you that want to be there. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll say again. Adam just said, what platforms I use to buy stocks? I just use my Hargreaves Lansdowne. I'm just playing a SIPs. That's all I'm doing. So that's all it is. Just to get back to what I was saying, a few people have reached out to me this week. I'd be more than happy to jump onto calls with them, have a chat through stuff and etc. So I encourage, if people want to have a one-to-one and just act as me as an agony aunt or whatever, you just want to voice some things, feel free to message me. We'll try and arrange a time to have a discussion or a chat or just a conversation over Messenger or whatever. And yeah, it will get better, I promise you. But we've got to be realistic with where we think things are. Right, I'm going to leave it at that. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everybody, and I'll speak to you all soon. Cheers now.